Hello there! Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing marvellously well and that you're enjoying the Christmas season. So now here we are at part 4 of our story. And let's continue with our story. We're about to find out what exactly did happen to Douglas on that building site when he was leaving to go home. And what is actually about to happen that is going to activate a Bigfoot encounter around Ocean Spray Cottage? Well, you're about to find out right now. So let's continue with our story. Reuben's account. I share a flat with my older brother in Chicago, even though I never liked who he had become in recent years. When I was growing up, my older brother could do no wrong in my eyes. I viewed him as some kind of superhero. But that all changed exponentially when he started to deal with drugs. It was when I saw him beating up someone really badly because they failed to pay him on time for the drugs they had acquired from him that it occurred to me that my brother was not a good man. That came as a dreadful blow. It was like putting someone on a pedestal all of your life. You think that they are close to perfect, and then you realize they're anything but. That discovery can be mortifying. I know it was for me. I was amazed that the man my brother had beaten up actually got up and managed to hobble away. I couldn't believe he was still alive after such a beating. I want the money by next week, my brother called out to him. Or next time you're dead. Do you understand that? The man looked at my brother in a dazed terror, and I was revulsed by my brother's barbaric behaviour towards him. My brother turned around to look directly at me, and he said, "See how it's done, bro? This is how you make people respect you. No one will ever get away with not paying me what I'm owed. That man is very lucky to be alive. I went easy on him. But I do what I do, bro, to make everyone see that when I'm owed payment, I expect it on time, or something very bad will happen to them." In that poignant, revelatory moment, I knew without a shadow of a doubt what my brother was potentially capable of, and I thought it more than likely that he may have killed and got away with it. But I have no way of knowing whether I'm right or not about this. Of course, the police have sniffed around him often enough, asking questions, but they have nothing on him, as my brother has always been conniving, cunning, and very clever, so he's never been arrested. My brother's apartment had been raided for drugs by police before, but I think he had an informant on the inside, so he never got caught in the possession of drugs, and yet I have seen his bedroom look like a pharmacy, so he was a big dealer and very well known in these parts. The only reason I chose to live with someone as disagreeable as my brother is because I was made redundant from my last job, and so in my jobless state, I wasn't able to financially continue living in my old apartment, so I had to rely on my brother's hospitality. My mother lived with my stepfather, whom I never liked, so living with her was not even a viable option, even though I did consider it. I am lucky my brother has always been good to me, so it was a no-brainer that I would move in with him for as long as I liked. My brother had treated me very well all my life. He slapped me on the back and told me that he would always look out for his little brother, and I knew he meant that. "Bro, why don't you move in here with me?" he encouraged. "If you need any dough, you only have to ask." My brother may have been an artfully Machiavellian dealer, but never once did he ever take drugs himself, which is incredibly unusual. And he certainly wouldn't have allowed me to experiment with the stuff either. "Drugs scramble your brain, bro. They screw you up," he would say. And yet, despite knowing all this, my brother was extremely happy to sell the drugs without a conscience to all his customers, knowing full well what drugs do to people. He was ruthless in his dealing, and had earned a formidable reputation on the streets of Chicago. His street name was the Rottweiler, which was apt, as he'd eat you up alive for breakfast if you dared to cross him in any way, and people were naturally terrified of him. I was lying on my bed in my bedroom when I heard my brother on the phone. I noticed he sounded a bit irked, so I eavesdropped on his conversation. "You've got to be kidding! He's only gone to the Oregon coast, has he? Bloody cheek! I think he's running scared, isn't he? He knows we've been watching him. I will pay him a visit myself. Let him know what's what, so he keeps that mouth of his sealed. We may be far away from him in terms of location, but he needs to know I'm still watching him. If he talks to anyone, he's a goner, and I'll make sure he understands that. I'll be the one to put a bullet in his head myself, if I hear a word out of him. He told me he hasn't even told his wife about what I did to him, but I can't trust him. I still don't get how he didn't die that day, but I think a word with him should keep him in check. That man's a pussycat. He needs to know that the Rottweiler is breathing down his neck. Nothing has changed in that regard." Moments later, my brother came into my bedroom. He told me, "Get packed. We're going to the Oregon coast. It's a 29-hour drive from here. You're coming with me. We'll go in my Jeep." "Can't someone else go with you?" I asked him obsequiously. I really couldn't face spending 29 hours trapped in a car. I was predisposed to getting carsick. My brother looked at me thoughtfully, and then grinned. "No problems, bro. I tell you what we'll do. We'll fly there, and then we'll hire a car when we get to the Oregon coast." He clapped his hands. "Go on, it'll be fun. Let's do it, shall we, Rube?" I knew I couldn't exactly wiggle out of going with my brother on this trip, as he'd done so much for me, and all he required of me was my company. He'd never tried to rope me in getting involved with his drugs, and so what harm would it do just to fly with him to Oregon? "What's going on?" I asked him. "Why do you want me to come to Oregon with you? I heard you on your cell phone talking about letting some man know you're still breathing down his neck, lest he should talk about you. You're not going to do something stupid, are you, bro?" "Of course I'm not going to do anything stupid. What do you take me for, bro?" "I am after someone, as it happens. His name is Douglas Finnegan. He was a customer of mine for a very long time, until he wasn't. He bought heavy-duty stuff from me, due to the excruciating back pain he'd been experiencing since he was a kid. And he found what I gave him relieved his pain exponentially, like nothing else he'd ever tried. He became addicted to what I gave him. He wanted more and more of the stuff. He complained bitterly when I stepped up the price. But I'm a businessman. That's what you do. He started owing me money big time. Douglas would give his wife a check for household expenses every month, because she managed the finances for the family. He was worried that his wife, a woman called Anna, was going to notice how much money was going missing from their account every month. He didn't want her to grow suspicious of him. She would be mortified, he said, if she knew about his drug habit. I told him I didn't care about all that. He needed to pay his outstanding debts in a week's time, or there would be big recriminations. He knew I meant business. He told me that he needed a few more days to acquire the funds, but I knew he was toying with me. I'd seen it all before. Me and 2 other men I roped in to help me waited behind a bush near his car when he was leaving the building site where he worked. We pounced on him. In truth, we thought we had left him for dead, but he made an astonishing recovery. I visited him in the hospital myself, posing as a relative of the family's. I brought with me a big bouquet of flowers. I warned him that if he dared tell the police that I was responsible for beating him up, that he was a dead man. I told him I'd give orders for members of his own family to be harmed and killed. I told him he had a kid called Howie, and that I was watching his child. We wouldn't want anything bad to happen to little Howie, would we, Douglas? I could tell he was scared. When you start threatening your customer's family, you literally have them eating out of your hand. They know that if they tell the police, that it will backfire on them. I got one of my boys to hand-deliver notes in the post, warning him to keep quiet. I've had my people following his family around very carefully. One of my informers found out he only upped and left his wife's family home in the middle of the night over a week ago. He's got a job as a caretaker at a place on the Oregon coast, a cottage known as Ocean Spray, where he's taking care of the estate of a man called Claudia Fiorentino. So if you must know, that's why I'm going to the coast. I need to see him in person, to establish some ground rules with him. If he messes me around, he's as good as dead. But why? I don't understand, I asked my brother. Why do you need to pay this man a visit? Is it really necessary? I'm sure you've got nothing to worry about. I'm sure he's scared of you. That's why I suspect he went to the Oregon coast in the first place, to escape Chicago and escape you. Why don't you leave him the hell alone? I'm watching my back, bro, that's why. Douglas Finnegan is lucky to be alive, let me tell you. If he thinks he can run away from my beady eyes, he's got another thing coming. I want him to know that if he dares blab to anyone about me, I will harm him and kill him if need be. And I have associates that will harm him on my behalf. If I get locked up or thrown into prison, I need to make my position very clear with him. He needs to know that I'm watching him all the time, but there is no escape for the wicked. I know exactly where he is. He'll never be able to breathe easily at night, because I'm watching him. Look, bro, I said, I think you're overreacting. This man is not going to blab to the police. If I was wearing his shoes, I wouldn't. He's already running scared. If he was going to say something, he would have already told the police everything they wanted to know. But he hasn't, has he? I don't think he will say anything after all this time. Think about it. If you fail to report a crime for months on end, a robbery perhaps or something like that, well, it's going to look profoundly strange if you suddenly file a police report. I'm sure going all the way to the Oregon coast to relay your message is a little bit dramatic and a waste of time. Bro, said my brother, slapping me on the back affectionately. I'm not called the Rottweiler for nothing, you know. I do what I do to establish a reputation for myself, a formidable reputation, to create boundaries that cannot be crossed, or else people will think they can mess with me. If they see any chinks in my armor, they would take advantage, and I can't have that under any circumstances. Don't you feel bad, bro, that you nearly killed this poor man? I asked my brother. You forget I've seen you beat someone up before, and it was brutal. Why don't you leave this Douglas fellow alone? Because I cannot, bro. I don't expect you to understand. The drug business is a tough game, you know. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. If you're afraid to fight, you don't get involved in this business, or you'll be bitten. So what's your plan, then, when you get to the Oregon coast, I mean? Are you just going to knock on the door and say hi there? just so that you know I'm still watching you." "No, I'm not going to do that, bro. I'm going to find out exactly where on the Oregon coast Ocean Spray Cottage is. And when we've done our homework, we are going to give Douglas Finnegan the surprise of his life. One he is never going to forget. We will knock on his front door at the dead of night, when he's nicely tucked away in bed, and we'll pay him a midnight call that he's not expecting. I need my customers to always remain unsettled, taken off guard, so receiving a fortuitous visit from me, when he's not anticipating a visit of any kind, will leave his feathers ruffled, so that he'll never ever forget that I'm watching him." "Bloody hell, bro. Isn't that rather creepy? Paying him a visit at the dead of night? That is freaky. You're going to get them out of their beds, the whole Finnegan family, and scare the bejesus out of them. I hardly think that is fair." "You get the idea, bro," said my brother. "That's how I like to do business. Scare the hell out of my customers, so they know who's boss, who's calling the shots. The good news, bro, is you're coming along with me for the ride." "No, I'm not, bro," I said, shaking my head vigorously, and holding my hand up to steady my brother's idea, to hold it back in some way, before it blossomed any further. I wanted no part of scaring an innocent American family half to death. I was against my brother doing something like this in the very first place. "I tell you what," I told him, "I'll come along with you on that flight. But I am not going to come with you and knock on somebody's door at the dead of night, while you issue your idle threats to Douglas Finnegan. I just can't do that. I don't like what you do, bro, and I never have. I want no part of your drug business." "Who said anything about you getting involved with drugs, Reuben? You're overreacting, bro, like you always do. You would be useless in the drug business. You're far too soft anyway. We're simply going to let Douglas Finnegan know that he can never get too comfortable living out there on the Oregon coast, because I'm still watching him. You will come with me, Reuben. I must insist, and I won't take no for an answer. I've done a hell of a lot for you over the years, and the least you can do is accompany me on this trip. You don't even have to come to the front door with me when I wake the Finnegan family up in the middle of the night. But I want you waiting for me in the wings, if you get my drift, and I don't think that's asking too much." The cadence of my brother's voice was both stern and intimidating. I knew I had no place to argue with him. It was true. He'd generously given me money when I needed it, shelter and food. So I knew I was caught between a rock and a hard place. So I reluctantly agreed to accompany him on this crazy mission, even though I wanted no part of this. How I wished I had not been made redundant from my job, because then I wouldn't be in such a financial pickle, and I could have avoided becoming ensnared in this horrible mess. It was crazy that Douglas Finnegan, who could not really be called a customer by rights anymore, was in the spotlight of my brother's concerns. I guess he was covering his back, ensuring that Douglas Finnegan never ever blabbed to the police on him. 2 nights later. It's very dark. Me and my brother are on the beach. It's a cool night, with a gentle breeze whipping against our skins. I feel far from happy about this mission. I know that we have to access a flight of steps up a hilly incline to reach Ocean Spray Cottage that overlooks the coastline. It's an enviable place to live, with what I imagine during the day must be idyllic views over the ocean. I wouldn't mind getting away from Chicago to live in a place like this. My heart is throbbing violently in my chest as I try to put myself in the Finnegan shoes when my brother begins banging on their front door in the middle of the night. I couldn't help thinking my brother had picked up this insane idea from all the horror movies we'd watched together over the years as children. This night would be like something out of Fright Night for the poor Finnegan family, and I could only feel sympathy for them. I clandestinely despised myself for not having the courage to stand up to my brother. But the truth was that even though he always looked out for me, I was extremely intimidated by him. And underneath all the layers, I'd always been a wee bit scared of him, something I was loath to admit. It would have been beautiful walking across the beach, had the circumstances been different, with the gossamer moonlight spilling generously on the surface of the ocean in a shimmering pearly glaze. The moon was happily nestled in the dark sky, like a big round white disk, and so the magnanimous light it offered us afforded us excellent visibility. I got the profound sense that someone was watching us, and this very disquieting feeling filtered through my clothes with an iciness that goes beyond the icy weather. I don't feel good about this, bro, I told him nervously, my eyes scanning the beach for any sign of obvious movement. I was certain we were being watched, but nothing was there, apart from a few crabs scurrying across the beach. I think we should go back to the car, I told my brother in earnest. Something is watching us. Oh, Reuben, said my brother, letting out a mock laugh. You are squeamish, aren't you? You're scared of everything. You were like that as a little boy, afraid of your own shadow. And now you're a man and you're still scared. Shame on you. You need to grow up, bro. I assure you there is nothing to fear. This will be over soon. I winced under the condescending blows from my brother, but I knew better than to take offence. But all the same, I was certain I was not mistaken, that we were being watched. I wasn't wrong, because I saw her. The woman was walking across the beach, pointing to us accusingly, as if she knew exactly what my brother intended to do. There was something airily strange and creepy about this woman. She looked real, but at the same time she did not. There was an airy luminescence around her when she walked towards us, and then I noticed she appeared to be floating, and that was when I observed the woman had no feet, nor shoes, and my blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, but no words seeped from my throat. I was frozen in terror. I felt like I'd become a character in a horror movie and stepped off the pages of a book straight into a story, of which I wanted to play no part. But I had been flung onto the pages, kicking and screaming. I realized in that moment I was obviously seeing a ghost. My brother did too. He was freaking out. I have never seen him afraid of anything before. But when he realized the woman had no feet, his eyes grew as round as saucers, and his mouth dropped wide open. I suspected he was disabled from being able to scream, but even his frantic cries would have been drowned out by the obstreperous crashing sounds of the waves. My legs crumbled beneath me. I willed this apparition to go away. She glared at me furiously. Seconds later, something more incredulous happened. A huge, big black mass began gallivanting towards us, moving like the wind, letting out an enormous shriek that was so terrifying I thought I was going to spontaneously combust. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of dread as my life flashed before me. The billowing black mass spiraled towards us like a dense, foggy smoke. As the fog got closer to us, I realized it was distinctly humanoid in shape, and then the spillage of the ethereal moonlight breathed its revelatory light over everything, and I realized this enigmatic misty black spectre was an indignant Bigfoot. He moved towards us, swinging his arms backwards and forwards furiously. And if I thought the ghostly woman was threatening, this creature was 1,000 times worse. The Bigfoot was 9 foot tall, with a distinctive pyramid-shaped head, ponderous shoulders, and long flowing dark hair. I heard a screaming, deep guttural voice ringing in my head saying, "Get out of here! Don't you ever come back, or I will kill the both of you! Leave these people alone! Why do you want to threaten them? I do not welcome dark energy in this place." The apparition of the woman continued to point at us accusingly, and then she vanished before my eyes. My heart thundered in my chest. Panic overcame me. The Bigfoot gave us chase. My brother was screaming, "Run, Roo! Run! This thing is going to kill us!" I'm glad to say, after a vacillating hesitancy, like a stalling car engine that refuses to start, eventually my adrenaline kicked in, and I began to run across that beach, faster than I've ever run before or since. But I knew I was no match for this Bigfoot. I tried to run towards my brother's car that was parked in a parking bay near the beach, but I never reached it in time, as the Bigfoot was so close behind me. My heart dipped in terror as I felt his vaporous breath on my neck. Oh my God, he was going to get me! He was going to kill me! He was too close for comfort! I was certain that I was a dead man. But the Bigfoot brushed right past me, and then he began to give my brother chase. He threw my brother onto the beach sand. My brother began to scream out, "Help me, Reuben! Do something! Help!" But what could I do? I slowed down to a walking pace and just simply stared. The Bigfoot did not seem interested in harming me, but his hostile intentions were focused on my brother. His eyes seemed to breathe out fire as he glowered down at my brother. "Please don't hurt him!" I begged the Bigfoot. "Please don't hurt him!" The Bigfoot was staring down at my brother defiantly, and then he turned around and glided away down the beach sand and was gone from our sight, leaving me and my brother staring at each other in bewilderment. We were amazed that we were still alive and that the Bigfoot had gone. "Bloody hell! That Bigfoot spoke to me," said my brother. "I'm not making this up, Reuben. He spoke to me. Can you believe that? He told me if I ever came back to this beach again, he would kill me. We need to get the hell out of here now. There's something weird going on in this beach, and I want no part of it." It was 2 days after this strange event that my brother was arrested by the police. DNA evidence was recovered on a deceased corpse of one of his customers who had failed to pay him on time. My brother was accused of this man's murder. He was locked away for life. I am in no doubt he did what he was accused of. Don't get me wrong, I love my brother, but I don't like the bad choices he has made in his life and the evil things he's done. So he deserved to spend the rest of his life locked up in a prison cell. He is reaping what he sowed. If you're evil, your wickedness will come back to bite you, as it has done so for my brother. I have always warned him that the road he was travelling down would lead to imminent disaster, but he failed to listen, and now he regrets the choices he has made. He even wrote to Mr. Finnegan, would you believe it, to apologise for beating him up. I think he regrets some of the life choices he made. He had a degree as an accountant, and he thought selling drugs would be an easy way to get rich quick. It turned out it was the worst decision of his life. After my brother was incarcerated, I informed the Finnegan family at Ocean Spray Cottage about everything that had transpired on the beach that night, as I wanted answers. and I told them about my brother's insidious intention to scare them half to death. But I told them they need not look over their shoulders any more. My brother was now safely locked away in a prison cell for good. Anna Finnegan told me the ghost I saw was a woman called Mrs. Seymour, who was protecting Ocean Spray Cottage, as she had a physical attachment to the place, even in death. I was told that in life she enjoyed a relationship with a Bigfoot, and the descendants of her Bigfoot friend were now watching over Ocean Spray Cottage on her behalf. I realized in that moment that this world is a hell of a lot more extraordinary than we give it credit for, and that the spirit world knows exactly what we're doing. I know the ghost of Mrs. Seymour knew what my brother's intentions were that night, as did the Bigfoot. There are some things we cannot hide from those that we cannot see, and that Bigfoot was determined to scare us away. Mrs. Finnegan was shocked to learn that her husband had been in insufferable back pain for many years, which was why he'd been buying drugs on the sly from my brother. Mr. Finnegan said that after he was beaten up within an inch of his life, he made a full recovery, and his back pain mysteriously vanished. The Finnegans still live at Ocean Spray Cottage. They love their new lives by the coast. But it is only their son Howie that ever catches a sighting of his two Bigfoot friends. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. Loved every minute of it. Thank you very much. Until next time, goodbye and good night.